So we're going to talk about Kubla Khan and the Prester John Parallax. This is my favorite of the plays that we're talking about. I also think it's the best of the Khan plays. It's interesting hearing you describe what you're going to do before you do it. You were talking about how Kubla Khan is a patron of the arts, and there is some of that, but I think that it goes in different directions from what was initially posited. Talk a little bit about the two titular characters, Kubla Khan, Prester John, Prester John. But before I go there, I wanted to read the epigraph for the play. It's from Kenneth Rocks. Suddenly, I remember coming home from swimming in 10 Mile Creek over the long moraine in the early summer evening, my hair wet, smelling of water weeds and mud. I remember a sycamore in front of a ruined farmhouse, and instantly and clearly the revelation of a song of incredible purity and joy. My first rose-bested Grosby, facing the low sun, his body suffused with light. I was motionless and cold in the hot evening until he flew away, and I went on knowing, in my 12th year, one of the great things of my life had happened.
And that's from the poem Gik Tahar. This is back when we had books called encyclopedias. So that would, anything from GIC to HAR would be in that particular volume. And that's where the rest of the poem references the encyclopedia. But it was just, to me, that was just the perfect epigraph to use for this, because this is about certain moments. And this play is about Kubla Khan, and I call him Kubla, not Kublai, AI with an N, but Kubla, just as it's in the Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem that's quoted within here, Xanadu, Kubla Khan, and Xanadu did Kubla Khan, a pleasure dome decree. Whereas the Genghis Khan play dealt with him on the cusp of making a decision whether to commit genocide against a certain people. Ogadai Khan play ends, that has in different time frames. It's his life, it's what happened after his life, and then it's the Danny Wagner stuff, and it ends with sort of a contest of wills and a battle of philosophy between General Subutai and Teregana the Great Khatun. This one is set almost 30 years after the Ogadai play, and about 45 years after Genghis Khan's play when he dies. And so Kubla Khan has now been the Great Khan, or the Khagan, for almost a decade, about 8 years. And this is when he is about to found the Yuan dynasty in China, because the Mongol Empire is now at its zenith in terms of land, people conquered. It stretches all the way. They were just about to conquer the Sung dynasty in southern China, so they stretch all the way from the Pacific to really a good portion of European Russia, and maybe some parts of Poland and some other Eastern European nations. Kubla Khan has pacified a lot of things. He's seemingly got the empire under control. And this play, we deal with his stuff, but it also explains some stuff that happened in the earlier play. We get a flashback with Kubla Khan, for example, with Genghis Khan. And since Kubla was born in 1215 and Genghis died in, I think, 1226 or 27, there's a scene where he's got to be maybe somewhere between the age of 6 and 10, where he's out with his grandfather. And we get a flashback within a flashback. We get the flashback of Kubla remembering Genghis Khan telling him about when he was going out with his father, Yesegai, which goes all the way back to the first play. And we get what may be the reason why all of these great Khans are being plagued by the woman in white, who is the apparition of the human apparition version of the crow, which is a harbinger of doom in many cultures.
It begins with Kubla and Fragile Leaf interrogating a prisoner, and then at the end of it, he begins swinging an axe over the prisoner's head, and then you get a blackout. I thought that was an interesting touch. It's also more of the Peanuts talk, yeah. Throughout it, but again used differently than the first two plays. If you look at the three different characters, you'll see Genghis Khan is the great leader, the visionary, and then you have Ogadai, who's more of the buffoon, and then Kubla, who really inherited a lot of his grandfather's ideas and expanded the empire. I think that it's interesting too how open-minded he was in comparison to Genghis. There is always the great argument of which of the two Khans was greater. I think Kubla is actually more well known in some quarters, but Genghis did start the empire, and he did what no other man had done before, bringing upward mobility to people and really assimilating other nations. Um, but I just wanted your thoughts on that and how they differ within these three plays.
Well, I would say that I don't think Ogadai is a fool. He was a competent leader. We see Ogadai, though, mostly towards the end of his life when he became a drunk and he was sick, and he's in his last year before death. So he's not that different, though. His end, where he's being plagued by the woman in white, is not that different from that of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan survives the woman in white. Ogadai Khan is in a drunken stupor and he falls in the river and he drowns himself in his last scene with the woman in white. And we actually see repetitions of that in the final battle where Kubla, Genghis, and Ogadai are all arrayed against the woman in white. We get basically an almost word-for-word repetition of Ogadai's and Genghis's parts of their scenes with the woman in white. And I thought that would be a good touch to do that, because even if you haven't seen the other two plays, that it works on its own. Yeah, and Genghis Khan, as I've said, to me is the most influential, most important person of the second millennium. You remove him, and more of the world changes than anyone else. So I think that speaks for itself. Kublai Khan, though, was the person who was probably the more able leader on a day-to-day basis. He was not the military leader that Genghis was, and maybe not even as militarily successful as Ogadai. But there are interesting parallels, because he ends up killing his own brother. Now I can't even remember the name of his brother. Before Kublai Khan was crowned as the Khagan, his brother Arik Buka tried to declare himself the great Khan, and they fought a civil war, and Arik Buka lost, and a few years later he died under mysterious circumstances, just like the great Khatun died under mysterious circumstances when her son, I think it was Guyuk or Monkey, I think it was Guyuk, ended up killing her. And just like we have the original sin of Genghis Khan killing his brother Bektar, and we get Belgatai. And this is one of the most interesting things, is that Genghis Khan's older brother Belgatai was said to have been born in 1261, and he attended the founding of the Yuan dynasty in 1271. That means he was 110 years old in the 1200s. And this goes back to his own sort of myth-making, that he was living two lives, that of his dead brother and whatnot. And we see Belgatai sort of flirting with this young attendant girl in the Chinese court as he's been summoned for the festivities. We never see the festivities. This is everything leading up to the festivities of the founding of the Yuan dynasty. So we get there's a lot of callbacks to the earlier plays that you don't have to see. It works if it's a standalone play, but we get callbacks, and we get the fact that, Genghis Khan killed his brother when he was young. Kublai Khan kills one of his brothers when they're battling for supremacy of the empire. And we, as I said, we get the flashback within the flashback where Kublai Khan remembers being with his grandfather Genghis, who tells him in his flashback of his deliberate killing of a crow as a child, even though he had hunted before or whatnot. This was the first time, presumably, if we can surmise, that Genghis Khan just killed something wantonly without any thought. And even though he was a mass murderer who killed probably tens of millions of people, the killing of this innocent bird seemingly must have haunted him.